The wealthy man brings his mistress to the wedding, intending to humiliate his pregnant fiancée and make her suffer. However, he didn't know that his fiancée had already anticipated this move and had prepared something unimaginable for him. The text message glowed on the screen like a radioactive warning. "Can't wait to see her face when she finds out. You're deliciously cruel, my love." Eliza Voss stared at the words, her fingertips suddenly numb against the cool glass of Daniel's iPhone. She had only meant to call a cab, her own phone dead, the battery as depleted as she now felt. Time seemed to stretch and distort around her as reality shifted beneath her feet. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Upper East Side penthouse, Manhattan glittered with promise. 36 floors below, people moved like ants, unaware of the world shattering in this pristine white living room with its hand-carved Italian marble and views worth dying for. She carefully placed the phone back on the crystal side table, exactly as she had found it. Her hand traced the subtle curve of her belly, just beginning to show at 4 months pregnant. A secret they had agreed to keep until after the wedding. A secret that now felt like a tumor growing inside her. Daniel Calloway was Manhattan royalty. At 38, he commanded attention when he entered any room in New York, not with flash or charm, but with the quiet confidence of a man who had never known true hardship. Standing 6'2" with steel blue eyes that evaluated everything as an asset or liability, Daniel had parlayed his family's real estate empire into a financial kingdom that spanned continents. "The numbers don't feel right on the Hudson Yards development," Daniel said, fixing his gaze on the nervous analyst across the conference table. His voice was even, pleasant even, but everyone present recognized the danger lurking beneath. "Find me another 15 million in the budget by tomorrow morning or find another job." The men and women in tailored suits nodded, gathering their materials quickly. No one spoke until Daniel left the room. In the elevator down to his waiting town car, Daniel loosened his tie slightly and checked his Patek Philippe watch, a gift from his father when he made his first 100 million. 10 minutes to get across town for his interview with Vanity Fair. The magazine was doing a spread on New York's modern Renaissance man, a title Daniel had carefully cultivated. The generous donations to the Met, the mentorship program for underprivileged youth interested in architecture, the environmental initiatives for sustainable building, each piece strategically placed to construct an image as meticulously designed as his buildings. As the car pulled up to the studio, his phone buzzed. Skylar. "Not now," he muttered, silencing the call. He'd see her tonight anyway, at the hotel in Tribeca where they'd been meeting for the past 6 months. His driver opened the door, and Daniel stepped out, adjusting his custom Tom Ford suit. He slipped on the mask of philanthropist and visionary that New York had come to expect. "You have an astonishing eye for emerging talent, Ms. Voss," the gallery owner said, studying the arrangement of sculptures that Eliza had curated for the spring exhibition. "I've never seen Nakamura's work displayed with such intuitive understanding." Eliza tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear, a small smile playing at her lips. "His pieces speak to isolation within crowded spaces. I just listened to what they were saying." At 32, Eliza had become one of the most respected curators in Manhattan's competitive art world, an achievement made more impressive by her background. Growing up in a small Michigan town where art meant the annual craft fair, she had fought her way to NYU on scholarships and determination, waiting tables to afford textbooks and interning at galleries for experience when her peers were partying. Her green eyes, intense and thoughtful, moved across the installation, making small mental adjustments. This exhibition would be her last major project before the wedding, and she wanted it to be perfect. Funny, she thought, how perfection means such different things in my world and Daniel's. In her world, perfection was found in the beautiful asymmetry of handcrafted ceramics. In his, it was measured in profit margins and square footage. Yet somehow, they had found each other 3 years ago at a charity auction where one of her artists was being featured. She remembered his approach, direct, confident, but with a curiosity about her world that seemed genuine. When he called the next day, she had expected a donation to the gallery. Instead, he asked her to dinner. Now, with the wedding 6 weeks away, Eliza found herself living between worlds, her small artist's apartment in Chelsea that she kept as a studio, and Daniel's sterile penthouse with its spectacular views and emotional emptiness. As she left the gallery, her phone chimed with a calendar reminder, final dress fitting tomorrow at 10. The wedding that page 6 had dubbed the union of commerce and culture was approaching with the inevitability of an oncoming train. "Higher, darling." Yes, just like that. Skylar Morrow arched her back against the silk sheets, knowing exactly how the light from the hotel window would gild her naked body. At 29, she had mastered the art of being looked at, not just seen, but desired. Her career as a model had opened doors, but it was her calculated ambition that kept them from closing. Daniel ran his hand down the curve of her spine, his wedding ring left behind in a dish at his penthouse. "You're insatiable," he murmured. "Only for you," she lied effortlessly, turning to face him. "Have you thought more about what we discussed?" Daniel's face hardened slightly, the post-coital softness evaporating. "It's all arranged. The wedding proceeds as planned, and during the reception, you humiliate her in front of New York's elite," Skylar finished, a delicious thrill running through her. "And I make my entrance as the woman you couldn't resist. Very dramatic, very us." "It's not about drama, Skylar. It's about control." Daniel sat up, reaching for his phone. "Eliza has constructed this fantasy about our perfect life together. She needs to understand, very publicly, that such things don't exist." "And the baby?" Skylar's voice took on a harder edge. "A complication, not a catastrophe." Daniel scrolled through emails, already mentally elsewhere. "Money solves most problems. She'll get a generous settlement if she keeps things discreet about the child." What Daniel didn't see was the calculation behind Skylar's eyes. For her, this wasn't just about becoming his mistress. The Calloway name, the fortune, the social position, these were the real prizes. The pregnancy was an irritating obstacle, but temporary. Everything was temporary in Skylar's world, except ambition. Later, as Daniel slept, Skylar carefully accessed his phone and forwarded some of their more explicit messages to her own device. "Insurance," she told herself. In her experience, men like Daniel discarded women as easily as yesterday's newspapers. She typed a quick message. "Can't wait to see her face when she finds out. You're deliciously cruel, my love." Daniel's phone buzzed with her incoming text, but he didn't stir. The bridal boutique on Madison Avenue was a temple of white, its hushed atmosphere broken only by the occasional pop of champagne corks and delighted gasps from brides-to-be. Eliza stood on the pedestal, surrounded by mirrors that reflected a woman she barely recognized. "The alterations are perfect," the attendant said, adjusting the delicate lace at Eliza's shoulder. "No one will be able to tell you're expecting." Eliza nodded, studying her reflection. The gown was a masterpiece, understated elegance with hand-embroidered details that told a story across the silk. Daniel had insisted on the best, had arranged for this exclusive designer who typically had a 2-year waiting list. "You look troubled, darling," came a voice from the plush viewing area. Maya Santiago, Eliza's oldest friend and successful corporate attorney, was studying her with concern over the rim of her champagne flute. "Wedding jitters or something else?" When the attendant stepped away to fetch the veil, Eliza turned to her friend. "Daniel's been distant. I thought it was work stress or wedding pressure, but what? I don't know. Maybe I'm being paranoid." Eliza forced a smile. "Pregnancy hormones, probably." Maya's dark eyes narrowed slightly. As a divorce attorney to New York's elite, she had developed a sixth sense for marital problems. "Trust your instincts, Eliza. They got you out of Michigan and to the top of your field. If something feels wrong, everything's fine," Eliza said quickly. Too quickly. "Really." On the cab ride home, Eliza's mind returned to the text message she'd seen 3 days earlier. She had been avoiding thinking about it, pushing it away like a nightmare that might disappear in daylight. But every time Daniel touched her since then, every kiss, every question about the wedding plans, felt tainted. That night she watched him across the dinner table. This handsome stranger who was to be her husband, the father of her child. He spoke about some issue with the caterer, something about the wine selection, and Eliza found herself studying him like one of her art installations, looking for meaning, for truth beneath the surface. "Is everything all right?" Daniel asked, noticing her silence. "Yes," she said, offering a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just thinking about the big day." "It will be perfect," he assured her, reaching across to squeeze her hand. "Everything I've ever wanted." The lie hung between them like smoke. Marcus Calloway had built his real estate empire from a single Harlem brownstone to a global corporation. But at 70, his greatest pride and deepest disappointment was his only son. From his corner office in the Calloway building, He could see much of the Manhattan skyline, many buildings bearing his family name. "Mr. Calloway, your son is here," his assistant announced through the intercom. "Send him in," Marcus replied, his voice gravelly from years of Cuban cigars. Daniel entered with the confidence of a man in his prime. "The Hudson Yards numbers are fixed. We'll break ground next month." Marcus nodded, studying his son. Physically, Daniel was impressive, tall like his late mother, with her piercing blue eyes and his own square jaw. But there was something cold in Daniel that Marcus had never understood, something calculating that went beyond business acumen. "I hear the wedding plans are proceeding well," Marcus said, changing the subject. "On schedule and under budget," Daniel replied with a tight smile. "And Eliza? How is she feeling with the pregnancy?" A flicker of irritation crossed Daniel's face. "Fine, she's fine. We're keeping it quiet until after the wedding, as agreed." "As you insisted," Marcus corrected. "I still don't understand the secrecy. A grandchild is something to celebrate." "Image management, Dad, you taught me that." Daniel checked his watch. "I have a meeting downtown." After his son left, Marcus sat back in his leather chair, troubled. He had never fully approved of Daniel's relationship with Eliza, not because he disliked her, but because he saw how his son looked at her when he thought no one was watching. Not with love, but with possession, like another acquisition. Marcus picked up the phone. "Get me everything we have on Skylar Morrow," he instructed his private security chief, discreetly. The investigation started small. A private detective, Maya recommended, who specialized in infidelity cases among New York's ultra-wealthy. The first report came back within 48 hours. Eliza sat in her Chelsea studio, surrounded by half-finished ceramic pieces, reading the clinical details of her fiancé's betrayal. Dates, times, locations. Photos of Daniel and Skylar entering and leaving the hotel in Tribeca. Transcripts of text messages that made her physically ill. But it was the additional information that truly devastated her. The private investigator had discovered financial movements, large sums transferred to offshore accounts, changes to Daniel's will and corporate holdings, all designed to protect his assets from her. The modified prenuptial agreement she had signed, which Daniel had assured her was standard for someone in his position, suddenly took on new meaning. She had been so trusting, so certain of their future, that she hadn't even had Maya review it. "He's planning to leave me with nothing," she whispered to the empty studio. "He's been planning it all along." The pregnancy, their child, was described in one recovered message as an inconvenient complication. Another message detailed how they would proceed with the wedding, only for Daniel to publicly humiliate her at the reception when Skylar made her dramatic entrance. Eliza's hands shook as she set down the report. The pain was physical, radiating from her chest outward until her entire body felt consumed by it. She stumbled to the bathroom just in time to vomit, heaving until there was nothing left but bitter bile. When she finally stood and faced herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back, pale, trembling, with tears cutting trails through her makeup. "No," she said to her reflection, her voice stronger than she expected. "This is not how my story ends." She splashed cold water on her face and returned to the living area, picking up her phone. She had 5 weeks until the wedding. 5 weeks to ensure that Daniel Calloway would regret the day he decided to make her his victim. "Maya," she said when her friend answered, "I need your help, and I need you to connect me with Daniel's father." That night, as Eliza lay beside Daniel in their bed, she watched him sleep, the steady rise and fall of his chest, the face that had once made her heart race now filling her with a cold determination. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she whispered, too softly to wake him. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the subtle firmness where their child grew. "But you're about to find out." Maya Santiago's corner office in the Flatiron district offered a view of Manhattan that felt appropriate for her career trajectory. Impressive, hard-won, and still climbing. At 35, she had become one of the city's most formidable divorce attorneys by combining legal brilliance with an uncanny ability to anticipate how wealth and privilege would behave when threatened. "Jesus Christ," she muttered, flipping through the private investigator's updated report. "He's not just planning to humiliate you, this is financial warfare." Eliza sat opposite her, back straight, hands folded over her growing belly. In the weeks since discovering Daniel's betrayal, she had moved past the initial shock. The tears had dried up, replaced by something harder, something colder. Walk me through it again, Eliza said. Maya adjusted her glasses. Based on what we've uncovered, Daniel has been systematically preparing for this for at least 6 months. The offshore accounts in the Caymans are just the beginning. He's restructured his personal holdings, separate from the Callaway Company assets, created a labyrinth of shell companies, and modified his will to exclude not just you but any children. And the prenup I signed. It's predatory, Eliza. If you divorce him, you get virtually nothing. If he divorces you for any reason, including infidelity, real or manufactured, you not only get nothing, you're liable for a reputational damage clause. Maya shook her head in disgust. It's designed to leave you destitute and legally handcuffed from even telling your side of the story. And our baby? The prenup doesn't address children directly, which is something we can use. But his text messages make his intentions clear. Minimal involvement, controlled access, and using money to solve the problem. Maya's voice softened. I've seen some vicious prenups in my career, but this is calculated cruelty. Eliza stared out the window, watching clouds gather over the city. The wedding is in 33 days. What's our next move? Maya leaned forward. We need more than just evidence of an affair. We need proof of his intent to defraud you, to publicly humiliate you, and most importantly, we need leverage that can't be buried by Callaway money. Marcus Callaway, Eliza said quietly. A smile spread across Maya's face. I've already set up the meeting. So she just gets up and announces it in front of everyone? Daniel lounged in the hotel suite's living area, sipping 18-year-old Macallan, as Skylar emerged from the bedroom in nothing but his dress shirt. No, darling, that's tasteless. Skylar rolled her eyes, helping herself to his whiskey. The plan is elegant in its simplicity. You give your speech about new beginnings and your wonderful bride. I text you at the prearranged time. You check your phone, look troubled, and excuse yourself. After a dramatically appropriate interval, I find you. Someone, accidentally on purpose, follows. They discover us in an unmistakable embrace. Daniel nodded, imagining the scene unfolding at their reception in the Rainbow Room. And the story leaks to the press immediately. By morning, it's everywhere. Exactly. Eliza is humiliated, but in a way that makes you seem human rather than monstrous. The wealthy heir who couldn't resist temptation, a tale as old as money itself. Skylar straddled him, placing her hands on his chest. And within weeks, after an appropriate display of contrition, we can be seen together. Gradually, of course, the narrative becomes one of forbidden love, poor judgment, but ultimately, a happy ending. For us, Daniel said, his hands moving to her waist. For us, she agreed, thinking of the Callaway fortune, the social position, the power that would soon be within her grasp. What Daniel didn't know, what she'd made certain he didn't know, was that she had been carefully documenting everything. His admissions, his plans, his financial maneuvers. Insurance, she told herself. Men like Daniel Callaway didn't keep mistresses forever. Later, as Daniel showered, Skylar checked her own secret email account, the one containing forwarded messages, photos, and recordings of their meetings. The one even Daniel's investigator hadn't discovered. She scrolled to a message from 3 months earlier. The baby complicates things but doesn't change the plan. Once the wedding is over and the humiliation complete, I'll offer a settlement. Enough to keep her quiet and give me distance from the child. Marcus will hate it, but he'll accept it to protect the family name. Skylar smiled to herself. Soon, very soon, she would be the one protected by that name. The Callaway Group headquarters occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming tower on Park Avenue. Marcus Callaway's office, unlike his son's sleek minimalist space, was a testament to old money. Wood-paneled walls, leather-bound books, and artwork from established masters rather than trendy newcomers. Eliza sat opposite the man who would have been her father-in-law, acutely aware of the power differential. Marcus Callaway could crush her with a phone call, or he could be her most powerful ally. I appreciate you seeing me, Mr. Callaway, she began. Marcus, please. The older man studied her with eyes remarkably similar to his son's in color, but warmer, more human. I've been hoping we might speak privately before the wedding. Eliza took a deep breath. This isn't an easy conversation, but I've discovered something that affects not just me, but potentially the Callaway name and business. For the next 20 minutes, she laid out what she had learned, methodically, without tears or accusations, presenting the evidence as she would an art analysis. She watched his face carefully, looking for disbelief, for dismissal, for the family loyalty that might override any evidence. What she saw instead was a profound sadness, followed by something harder. When she finished, Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he pressed a button on his desk phone. "Janice, cancel my meetings for the rest of the day." He released the button and turned back to Eliza. "Now, tell me what you want." Eliza met his gaze steadily. "Justice." A flicker of respect showed in the older man's eyes. "Not money. I have my own career. I don't need Calloway millions. What I need is to ensure my child has a future, and that your son understands there are consequences to treating people like commodities." Marcus nodded slowly. "When I was building this company, I made decisions I'm not proud of. Cut corners, stepped on people. I told myself it was necessary, that empires aren't built by saints." He looked out the window at the city he had helped shape. "I never wanted Daniel to be like me. I wanted him to be better." He turned back to Eliza. "It seems I failed in that." "Help me stop him," Eliza said simply. Marcus studied her for a long moment. "What you're proposing would humiliate my son publicly. It could damage the company, affect thousands of employees, impact our projects worldwide. What he's planning would destroy me and sideline your grandchild," Eliza replied, her voice steady. "There are no clean options left." The silence stretched between them, heavy with all that hadn't been said. Finally, Marcus reached for a crystal tumbler and poured 2 fingers of bourbon. He didn't offer Eliza any, mindful of her pregnancy. "My late wife would have liked you," he said, taking a sip. "She had the same kind of backbone, the same unwillingness to be a victim." He set down his glass and leaned forward. "Here's what we're going to do." The bridal shower at the Plaza Hotel's Palm Court was everything New York society expected. Elegant, exclusive, and exhaustively photographed for social media. Eliza moved through it like an actress playing a role, accepting congratulations from women who were Daniel's family friends, business associates, and social peers. "You're positively glowing," cooed a socialite whose name Eliza immediately forgot. "Daniel is such a catch. You must be over the moon." "Completely over it," Eliza agreed with a practiced smile, the double meaning her private joke. Maya appeared at her elbow with a fresh glass of sparkling water. 20 more minutes of this torture, then we have that fictitious dress emergency." Eliza nodded slightly, maintaining her smile for the cameras. The past 3 weeks had been a masterclass in deception, playing the excited bride while systematically preparing Daniel's downfall. The exhaustion of it hit her at unexpected moments, like now, surrounded by women who viewed her marriage as the season's social coup. "Have you seen the latest?" Maya whispered, showing Eliza her phone under the pretense of sharing wedding inspiration photos. On the screen was a surveillance photo of Daniel and Skylar entering their hotel, date stamped yesterday. Another notification showed an update from the financial investigator they'd hired, more evidence of Daniel's asset-shielding maneuvers, documented and catalogued. "It's all coming together," Maya murmured. As if on cue, Eliza's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Meeting set with AV team for reception. All confirmed." She slipped the phone back into her clutch, the familiar cold determination replacing her momentary fatigue. Every day brought them closer to the wedding, and to her reckoning. In the privacy of her Chelsea studio, away from Daniel's watchful eye, Eliza had created a sanctuary for her true self, and a war room for what she now thought of as Operation Comeuppance. A corkboard covered one wall, tracking Daniel's movements, Skylar's activities, and the complex web of financial transactions they'd uncovered. Tonight, she sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting through the information package Maya had delivered from their growing investigation team. Each new piece of evidence confirmed what she already knew. Daniel's betrayal was comprehensive, calculated, and had been in motion since before he proposed. One document caught her attention, a transcript of a call between Daniel and the wedding planner, dated 4 months earlier. "D. The reception needs to flow a specific way. After the first dance, I'll give a toast. That's when I need full house lights, all attention on the main stage." WP. "Of course, Mr. Calloway. And will there be a special surprise for the bride at that point? Many grooms arrange something sentimental." D. Laughing. "Yes, you could say that. It will certainly be memorable." Eliza set down the transcript, a wave of nausea washing over her that had nothing to do with pregnancy. He had been planning this humiliation even as he'd held her hand through ultrasound appointments, even as they'd discussed names for their child. She placed her hands on her growing belly, feeling the flutter of movement that had recently begun, her baby making its presence known. "I won't let him hurt us," she whispered. "I promise." Her phone rang, startling her. "Maya, turn on page 6 TV right now," her friend said without preamble. Eliza fumbled for the remote, switching on the small television in the corner. The entertainment news program was in the middle of a segment about upcoming society events. "And the wedding of the year is just 2 weeks away," the host was saying over photos of Daniel and Eliza at various events. Callaway heir Daniel will tie the knot with art world darling Eliza Voss in what insiders are calling the social event of the season. The ceremony at St. Patrick's Cathedral will be followed by a reception for 500 at the Rainbow Room. Sources close to the couple hint that guests should expect some major surprises during the celebration. Eliza felt her blood turn to ice. They knew. Somehow they knew about Daniel's plan. "That's not random gossip," Maya said in her ear. "Someone leaked it deliberately. They're setting the stage for whatever Daniel has planned. Or he's getting nervous that we're onto him and trying to solidify his narrative," Eliza replied, her mind racing. "Either way, we need to accelerate our timeline." After ending the call, Eliza returned to the corkboard, studying the pieces of Daniel's betrayal like an art installation. Each photo, document and transcript told part of a story she was about to rewrite. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Where are you?" "Dinner with the Whitneys at 8, remember?" She typed back, "Running late at the gallery. Meet you there. Love you." The lie came easily now, part of the performance that would continue for just 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks of smiling at his side, of discussing floral arrangements and honeymoon plans, of pretending she wasn't carrying the child of a man who saw them both as inconveniences to be managed. As she gathered her things to leave, Eliza caught her reflection in the mirror. The woman who looked back at her wasn't the trusting, open-hearted person who had fallen in love with Daniel Callaway 3 years ago. That woman was gone, replaced by someone harder, someone dangerous, someone capable of inflicting the same pain that had been planned for her. 14 days, she told her reflection. 14 days until Daniel learns what it means to underestimate me. She placed one hand on her belly and used the other to pull on her coat. Outside, the New York spring evening was cool and clear, the city lights beginning to glimmer against the darkening sky. Somewhere across town, Daniel waited at the restaurant, confident in his control of their shared future. Eliza hailed a taxi, a small smile playing at her lips as she imagined the moment when that control would shatter, as publicly and completely as he had planned to shatter her. The countdown to their wedding day had become a countdown to revolution. Dawn broke over Manhattan on May 15th, with picture-perfect clarity, as if the city itself were acknowledging the significance of the day. In the presidential suite of the Plaza Hotel, Eliza stood at the window watching the early morning light touch Central Park, transforming it into a tapestry of emerald and gold. "Nervous?" Maya asked, entering with 2 cups of herbal tea. "Strangely, no." Eliza accepted the tea, her expression serene. "I feel clear, like everything that came before was a fog, and now I can finally see." The suite bustled with controlled chaos as her small bridal party arrived. Makeup artists and hairstylists set up their stations. The wedding coordinator checked and rechecked her clipboard. Through it all, Eliza maintained a centered calm that some mistook for bridal bliss. Only Maya knew the truth. Only Maya understood that today's performance had nothing to do with vows and everything to do with vengeance. "Marcus confirmed everything's in place at the Rainbow Room," Maya murmured as a stylist began working on Eliza's auburn waves. "The AV team had a scheduling conflict and was replaced with our people. The server who'll be attending Daniel's table has been briefed. The security personnel have their instructions." Eliza nodded slightly, careful not to disturb the stylist's work. "And the press?" 5 strategic leaks to different outlets, all with the same message. "Expect the unexpected at the Callaway Voss wedding." They're primed for drama, just not the drama Daniel has planned. A text message from Marcus completed the morning briefing. "Package delivered to reception venue. All systems go." Eliza closed her eyes, allowing the makeup artist to work her magic. Behind her eyelids, she visualized the coming hours, the ceremony, the reception, the moment when everything would change, not just for her and Daniel, but for everyone who had ever underestimated what she was capable of. Across town in his penthouse, Daniel adjusted his custom Brioni tuxedo, satisfied with his reflection. At 38, he was in his prime, wealthy, powerful, and about to execute the social maneuver of the season. "Nervous, sir?" his valet asked, brushing an invisible speck from his shoulder. "Excited," Daniel corrected, checking his watch. "It's going to be a memorable day." His best man and childhood friend, Richard Kessler, entered with 2 crystal tumblers of bourbon. "Dutch courage for the condemned man," he joked, unaware of how the day would actually unfold. Daniel accepted the drink with a tight smile. "To new beginnings," he toasted, thinking not of Eliza but of Skylar, who at this moment would be preparing for her role in the day's events. His phone buzzed with a text from her. Dress selected read, "Impossible to miss. Ready when you are." He smiled and slipped the phone into his pocket. Everything was proceeding according to plan. By tonight, he would be free of his pregnant fiancée and the suffocating expectations of the marriage he'd never truly wanted. There would be a scandal, certainly. A few weeks of negative press. But scandals faded, and the Calloway name had weathered worse. What remained would be worth it. Freedom from Eliza and her increasingly domestic expectations, and the beginning of a new chapter with Skylar, who understood the rules of their arrangement. No children, no permanence. No emotional entanglements that couldn't be severed with a generous check. "Car's here," Richard announced, interrupting Daniel's thoughts. "Time to get you hitched." Daniel took one last look in the mirror, rehearsing the expression of contrition he would need later. Regretful but not devastated, apologetic but not pathetic. It was all about controlling the narrative. What he couldn't know was that the narrative had already been seized from his hands. St. Patrick's Cathedral stood majestic against the blue sky, its Gothic spires reaching heavenward, as if in judgment of the drama about to unfold within its sacred walls. Inside, 500 guests filled the pews, political figures, business titans, celebrities, and social elites. The society photographers allowed inside discreetly captured the assembly of wealth and influence. Daniel stood at the altar, the picture of aristocratic composure. The murmur of the crowd faded as the first notes of music signaled the ceremony's beginning. The procession moved with practiced precision, bridesmaids in pale blue, the matron of honor, then a collective hush as everyone rose for the bride. Eliza appeared at the end of the aisle, and despite himself, Daniel felt a moment of genuine appreciation. She was breathtaking. Her gown, a masterpiece of understated elegance, embraced her figure without revealing her pregnancy to the casual observer. Her face behind the delicate veil held an expression he couldn't quite read, serene yet somehow powerful. As her father walked her slowly forward, Eliza's eyes locked with Daniel's. For a suspended moment, she allowed all her knowledge, all her intent, to show in her gaze. A flash of something, uncertainty, fear, crossed his face before his practiced smile returned. The ceremony proceeded with the solemnity befitting the historic cathedral. They exchanged vows, Daniel speaking his with practiced sincerity, Eliza with a quiet intensity that several guests later described as moving. When the priest asked if anyone objected to the union, a current of tension rippled through those who had heard the society page whispers of surprises to come. But the moment passed in silence. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the priest declared, his words echoing in the vast space. "You may kiss the bride." Daniel lifted Eliza's veil, momentarily startled by the cold determination in her eyes. She smiled, a smile that didn't reach those eyes, and allowed his kiss, brief and proper for the setting. As they turned to face their applauding guests, Daniel whispered through his smile, "You look beautiful. Enjoy it while it lasts," she replied, her voice so soft he wasn't certain he'd heard her correctly. The Rainbow Room, 65 stories above Rockefeller Center, had been transformed into a crystal palace for the reception. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered spectacular panoramic views of Manhattan as the afternoon light began its slow fade toward evening. Eliza moved through the cocktail hour like a general surveying the battlefield, noting positions, confirming details with subtle glances to Maya and the security team they had installed. Daniel worked the room separately, accepting congratulations, playing the role of satisfied groom while sending occasional text updates to Skylar, who waited in a hotel room 3 blocks away. Cocktail hour ending, dinner in 30. Toast scheduled for 8:45. In the bridal suite set aside for Eliza to refresh before dinner, Maya conducted a final review. "Everything's in position," she confirmed. The video is cued. Marcus is prepared for his part. Security has been instructed to prevent any disruptions, including Skylar's planned entrance. Eliza nodded, checking her reflection in the mirror. She had changed from her ceremony gown to a sleeker reception dress that still elegantly concealed her pregnancy. What's Daniel doing now? Exactly what we predicted. He's been texting someone continuously, presumably Skylar, and checking the time obsessively. He's requested a microphone check twice. He's sticking to the script. And our script is better, Eliza said, a statement rather than a question. She took a deep breath. It's time. The reception unfolded with orchestrated precision. The bride and groom's entrance. The first dance to a song Daniel had selected. At Last, by Etta James, an ironic choice given his plans. The dinner service, impeccable and lavish. To the guests, it was the society wedding of the year. To the key players, it was the calm before the storm. At exactly 8:40 p.m., Daniel excused himself from the head table, ostensibly to prepare for his toast. In reality, he sent a final text to Skylar. Now. Across the room, Marcus Calloway caught Eliza's eye and gave an imperceptible nod. Maya touched a small communication device in her ear, confirming readiness with their team. At 8:45, Daniel returned, champagne flute in hand. He approached the microphone set up near the orchestra, his confidence evident in every step. The room quieted as he tapped the glass gently. "Distinguished guests, family, friends," he began, his voice smooth and practiced. "Today is a day I'll remember for the rest of my life." A knowing smile played at his lips as he continued, unaware that at that moment security was intercepting Skylar in the lobby, preventing her dramatic entrance. "They say that life is full of surprises, and sometimes we find happiness in unexpected places," Daniel continued, following his mental script perfectly. "I want to thank all of you for being part of this journey, and—" The lights dimmed suddenly, cutting him off mid-sentence. A large screen descended from the ceiling behind him, something not in the planned program. Daniel turned, confusion replacing his confident smile. "What the hell?" he muttered, as the screen illuminated with his own face. It was a video compilation, text messages between him and Skylar, displayed in crisp high definition for all 500 guests to see. His words, unmistakable and damning. "The wedding proceeds as planned. During the reception you make your entrance. I acknowledge our relationship publicly. Eliza is humiliated, but I come across as a man who simply couldn't resist temptation." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs as more messages appeared. The pregnancy is an inconvenient complication, but nothing money can't solve. Once this farce of a marriage is annulled, we'll manage the child situation with a generous settlement, distance and discretion. Daniel lunged for the microphone. "There's been some mistake. This is—" The sound system was no longer under his control. Instead, Eliza's voice filled the room as she rose from her seat, a handheld microphone activated. "No mistake, Daniel, just truth. Finally." The screen behind Daniel shifted to financial documents, offshore accounts, asset transfers, the amended will, all highlighted and annotated to show his systematic plan to leave her with nothing. The room had gone from murmurs to shocked silence. 500 of New York's most influential people watched as Daniel Calloway's carefully constructed world imploded in real time. Eliza walked slowly toward him, the spotlight following her. "You plan to humiliate me tonight," she said, her voice steady and clear. "To discard me and your child as if we were nothing more than an inconvenient business deal gone wrong." She stopped a few feet from him, meeting his gaze directly. "But you forgot something important, Daniel. You forgot to ask who I am. Not who you thought I was, a naive artist you could use and discard, but who I really am." Before Daniel could respond, Marcus Calloway stood, commanding attention with his presence alone. The patriarch approached the center of the room, positioning himself between his son and Eliza, but clearly aligned with her. "As chairman of the Calloway Group," Marcus announced, his voice carrying the weight of decades of authority, "I feel compelled to address what we've witnessed. These actions, the deception, the financial misconduct, the planned public humiliation of my daughter-in-law, and the dismissal of my grandchild, represent a fundamental violation of the values upon which our family and company were built." He turned to face Daniel directly. Effective immediately, Daniel Calloway is removed from his position as CEO of Calloway Enterprises and suspended from the board of directors pending a complete investigation. The shock on Daniel's face transformed to fury. "You can't do that," he hissed. "I built half those holdings. I expanded the company when you were ready to coast into retirement." "The company bylaws give me that exact authority," Marcus replied evenly. "And while you were strategizing how to abandon your pregnant wife, I was consulting with our legal team to ensure that authority remains intact." The scene had transcended scandal into historic territory, the public fall of Manhattan royalty, witnessed by everyone who mattered in New York society. Phones remained conspicuously dark. No one dared record this moment, knowing that to do so would align them against either the current or future head of the Calloway Empire. But every person present committed each detail to memory, understanding they were witnessing something extraordinary. Daniel's eyes darted around the room, seeing not supporters but spectators to his downfall. His gaze finally landed on Eliza. "You planned this," he said, comprehension dawning. "All of it." "I learned from the best," she replied simply. Security personnel now flanked Daniel discreetly, not touching him but clearly positioned to intervene if necessary. The music had stopped. The servers stood frozen along the walls. The only sound was the occasional gasp or whispered comment from the stunned guests. Daniel straightened his tie, attempting to reclaim some dignity. "This isn't over," he said quietly, for Eliza's ears only. "Not even close." "You're right about that," she agreed. "This is just the beginning." As security moved to escort Daniel from the room, the doors burst open. Skylar, having finally evaded the lobby security, made her entrance, dramatic as planned, but catastrophically mistimed. Her red dress, designed to capture attention, succeeded only in making her the second spectacle of the evening. She froze, taking in the scene. Daniel flanked by security, Marcus standing protectively near Eliza, the damning evidence still displayed on the screen. "You're late," Eliza called to her, a cold smile playing at her lips. "The performance has already concluded." Skylar backed away, understanding instantly that whatever plan she and Daniel had crafted had not merely failed but backfired catastrophically. She turned and fled, her red dress disappearing through the doorway like a drop of blood being washed away. Left in the center of the room, Daniel locked eyes with Eliza one final time. In that moment, something passed between them. A recognition, perhaps. He had believed her weak, malleable, easily discarded. She had proven herself to be something else entirely. "Goodbye, Daniel," Eliza said, her voice carrying in the silent room. "I'll have my attorney contact yours in the morning." As security finally escorted him out, the weight of what had transpired settled over the Rainbow Room. 500 of New York's elite had arrived expecting champagne and society gossip. They would leave with a story that would define the social landscape for years to come. Maya appeared at Eliza's side, squeezing her hand briefly. "Breathe," she whispered. "It's done." But Eliza knew better. As the murmurs around the room grew louder, as Marcus began speaking quietly with key board members present, as the wedding guests tried to process what they had witnessed, she placed a protective hand over her belly. This wasn't the end. It was merely the first battle in what would surely become a war, and she had just proven she knew how to win. The New York Times headline read, "Wedding of Deception, Calloway heir exposed, removed from family empire." The Wall Street Journal was more measured. Calloway Enterprises announces leadership change following family dispute. Page 6, predictably, was less restrained. "I don't bride gets even when billionaire groom plans wedding day humiliation." Eliza closed the browser on her tablet and stared out the window of her Chelsea apartment. 2 weeks had passed since the wedding, and the media frenzy showed little sign of abating. Her phone, with a new number known only to a select few, buzzed with a text from Maya. "Barrington's taking over as Daniel's counsel. Aggressive reputation, but predictable. We're ready." The wheels of justice, or at least legal proceedings, had begun turning with remarkable speed. The divorce filing had been submitted the morning after the wedding. Daniel's initial response had been a flurry of counteractions, attempting to freeze joint accounts. There were none. Threatening to contest the divorce, grounds were irrefutable, and demanding the return of stolen personal communications, legally obtained, as Maya had ensured. Eliza ran her hand over her growing belly, now visibly prominent at 5 months. "At least we don't have to hide you anymore," she said softly. The buzzer rang. Marcus Calloway, right on time for their weekly meeting. These sessions had become a fixture in her new reality, part legal strategy, part family counsel. The older man had proven an unexpected source of strength in the aftermath of the wedding disaster. The board meeting went as expected, Marcus said, after declining her offer of tea, opting instead for his customary black coffee. At 70, he seemed both wearied and energized by recent events, as if the crisis had awakened something long dormant. Daniel's formal removal as CEO was ratified unanimously. How did he take it? Eliza asked. Not from concern, but tactical necessity. Understanding Daniel's state of mind was crucial to anticipating his next moves. He didn't attend, sent his lawyer instead. Marcus shook his head. The Daniel I raised would have fought face to face, whatever the odds. This withdrawal, it's not like him. Eliza had seen another side of Daniel, calculating, patient, willing to play a long game. His absence wasn't surrender, but strategic repositioning. He's planning something, she said. The question is what? Marcus nodded gravely. Which brings me to this. He handed her a folder. The trust fund for my grandchild is established, completely separate from the family business or Daniel's personal assets, irrevocable and untouchable, even by me. Eliza accepted the folder without opening it. Thank you, but you know that was never my priority. I know, but it's mine. Marcus's eyes, so similar to Daniel's, yet so different in their humanity, held hers. Family legacy means more than buildings or balance sheets. It's about values that outlive us. As Marcus left, Eliza wondered how the same man had raised someone like Daniel. Nature versus nurture, a question she'd soon face herself as a single mother. Daniel Calloway's temporary residence, a suite at the Carlisle that cost more per night than most New Yorkers earned in a week, felt both luxurious and confining. Like a gilded cage, he thought bitterly, pouring his third scotch of the afternoon. The room's coffee table was covered with legal documents, financial statements, and newspapers chronicling his downfall. His phone, once constantly buzzing with business opportunities and social invitations, had grown increasingly silent. Even his closest friends had maintained a judicious distance. No one wanted to be collateral damage in the Calloway civil war. Mr. Calloway, his new attorney, Preston Barrington, entered from the suite's adjoining room where he'd been on a conference call. We have a problem with the Piedmont development investors. They're invoking the moral turpitude clause to force a buyout of your stake. Daniel laughed hollowly. Of course they are. Add it to the list. The past 2 weeks had brought a cascade of professional consequences. Board positions rescinded, investment partners distancing themselves. The coveted Rising CEO award from the Business Leadership Council quietly awarded to an alternate recipient. There's also the matter of Ms. Morrow, Barrington continued, his expression suggesting this was more personal territory than he preferred to navigate. What about her? Daniel asked flatly. She's been approached by 3 publications for tell-all interviews. My sources indicate she's negotiating terms. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Skylar. Of course. He'd ignored her calls and texts after the wedding disaster, too consumed with his own survival to manage her disappointment. Now she was weaponizing their relationship, another front in a war he was already losing. Buy her silence, he said simply, whatever it costs. Barrington nodded, making a note. Regarding the divorce proceedings, I want everything contested, everything. Make it long, make it painful, make it expensive. Mr. Calloway, given the evidence Ms. Voss possesses, a protracted legal battle might not be in your best interest. The continued publicity alone. I don't pay you for advice on my best interests, Daniel snapped. I pay you to execute my instructions, and my instruction is to fight, on every front. After the lawyer departed, Daniel moved to the window, staring out at the Manhattan skyline, a geography of power he had navigated effortlessly until 3 weeks ago. Buildings bearing his family name dotted the horizon, now forbidden territory to him. His phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. He opened it to find a photo of Skylar, smiling on the arm of tech billionaire Eric Langford at a charity gala. The message below read simply, "Moving on, you should too, best S." Daniel hurled the phone against the wall, where it shattered, fragments skittering across the plush carpet. Like his life, once solid, now in pieces. The gallery was closed to the public, the private event sign discouraging casual visitors. Inside, Eliza's exhibition, her first since the wedding scandal, was receiving its final preparations before tomorrow's opening. The lighting needs to be adjusted on the Morrison piece, she instructed an assistant. It's casting shadows that distort the texture. Maya entered, navigating around carefully positioned sculptures. "Sorry I'm late. Court ran long." She studied her friend with professional assessment. "You look tired." 6 months pregnant, in the middle of a high-profile divorce, preparing a career-defining exhibition. Eliza counted off on her fingers. Tired seems reasonable. The exhibition, titled Fractured Reflections, featured works that subtly incorporated themes of deception and revelation, artistic catharsis for the personal turmoil she'd endured. Critics who had seen preview pieces were already calling it her most powerful work to date. "Daniel's team filed another motion," Maya said, cutting to the chase. "They're requesting a psychiatric evaluation, suggesting your actions at the wedding demonstrate emotional instability that could affect your fitness as a parent." Eliza paused in her work, absorbing this latest attack. "Predictable," she said finally, "and desperate. Exactly what the judge will think," Maya agreed. "But it shows he's shifting strategy from financial to custody issues. He knows the money battle is lost, so he's looking for new pressure points." The idea of Daniel fighting for custody of a child he had called an inconvenient complication wasn't surprising. It wasn't about being a father, it was about control, about not losing completely. "Let him try," Eliza said, returning to the lighting adjustment with steady hands. "We have the texts, the emails, the recorded conversations. No judge will give custody to a man who planned to abandon his child before it was even born." Later, as the gallery emptied of staff, Eliza found herself alone with her creations. One piece in particular, a shattered mirror reconstructed with visible gold seams between the fragments, had become the exhibition's centerpiece. The Japanese concept of kintsugi, highlighting breaks rather than hiding them, treating damage as part of the object's history rather than something to disguise. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the strong kicks that had recently begun. Her daughter, the ultrasound had confirmed gender last week, was active tonight, as if sensing her mother's resolve. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, a promise to both of them. The Calloway family estate in the Hamptons had remained largely unchanged since Daniel's childhood, a sprawling monument to old money with its tennis courts, pool house, and private beach access. Marcus had summoned him here, away from the city's prying eyes, for what he called a necessary conversation. Daniel arrived to find his father in the study, surrounded by family photographs that chronicled generations of Calloway success. The implied message wasn't subtle. "You are failing your heritage." "You look terrible," Marcus observed, as Daniel poured himself a drink without waiting for an invitation. "Concerned about my welfare suddenly?" Daniel's tone was bitter. "After publicly destroying my career, you destroyed your career when you decided to humiliate your pregnant fiancée at your own wedding," Marcus countered evenly. "I merely ensured there were consequences." Daniel sank into a leather chair, suddenly exhausted. The past month had been a grueling exercise in damage control, with new fires erupting faster than he could extinguish them. "What do you want, Dad? Another public flogging? More family funds redirected to your precious grandchild? Just tell me why I'm here." Marcus studied his son with something between disappointment and pity. "You're here because, despite everything, you're still my son. And because I'm offering you one path back." Daniel's attention sharpened. "Back? Not to CEO. That's gone, possibly forever. But to a place in the company. A role that allows you to rebuild, to prove yourself again." Marcus leaned forward. "With conditions?" "Of course," Daniel said acidly. "Let me guess. Public apology, generous divorce settlement, playing the repentant father. Among others," Marcus agreed, unfazed by Daniel's tone. "But the central condition is this: therapy. Real therapy, not the PR-approved kind. Weekly sessions with Dr. Hamilton, my therapist for the past decade." Daniel stared at his father in disbelief. "You're in therapy? Since when?" "Since your mother died," Marcus said quietly. "Since I realized I was becoming someone she would have been ashamed of, someone who valued deals over people, power over connection." The mention of his mother, gone 15 years now, hit Daniel unexpectedly. Catherine Calloway had been the family's moral compass, the one person who could check Marcus's ruthless business instincts with a single disappointed look. "This isn't about business, son," Marcus continued. "It's about breaking a cycle. I raised you to be tough, to see people as assets or obstacles. I modeled the worst of myself and called it strength." He gestured to a photo of Catherine. She would be heartbroken to see what you've become, what I helped you become. Daniel felt something crack inside him, a hairline fracture in the armor he'd maintained since the wedding disaster. And if I refuse, then you forge your own path, with whatever resources you still control, but not with the Calloway name or company behind you. Marcus's voice was firm but not unkind. Your choice. After Daniel left, neither accepting nor rejecting the offer, he drove aimlessly along the coastal road, mind churning with conflicting emotions. Rage at his father's ultimatum, humiliation at being treated like a wayward child. But beneath those, something else. A hollow ache that had been growing since watching Eliza walk away from him at their reception. He pulled over at a scenic overlook, cutting the engine. The Atlantic stretched before him, vast and indifferent to human troubles. For the first time since his carefully constructed world began collapsing, Daniel allowed himself to consider a terrible possibility. What if he was wrong? Not just tactically, but fundamentally. The thought was so foreign, so at odds with his self-perception, that he physically recoiled from it. Yet it persisted, worming its way through justifications and defenses. His phone rang. Barrington again, undoubtedly with more bad news. He silenced it without answering, and continued staring at the ocean, feeling unmoored in ways he couldn't articulate. "It's a girl," Maya exclaimed, examining the ultrasound image in Eliza's kitchen. "Have you thought about names?" "Sophia," Eliza said without hesitation. "It means wisdom." "Perfect." Maya set down the image and switched to lawyer mode. "Now, about tomorrow's settlement conference." The doorbell interrupted her. Eliza checked the security monitor, surprised to see a messenger holding a large envelope. "Ms. Voss?" the courier confirmed when she opened the door. "This requires your signature." Inside the envelope was a single document, a complete withdrawal of Daniel's custody petition, notarized and filed with the court. No conditions, no negotiated terms, simply a unilateral surrender of his most powerful legal weapon. "This makes no sense," Maya said, examining the document for hidden traps. "It contradicts their entire strategy. Why would he suddenly abandon the custody fight?" Eliza studied the signature, unmistakably Daniel's. Maybe he finally realized he never wanted to be a father in the first place. The unexpected development cast a strange pall over what should have been a victory. In the weeks of legal warfare, Eliza had come to expect, even anticipate, Daniel's attacks. This surrender felt wrong, like a chess player sacrificing their queen without apparent purpose. "We proceed as planned," she decided. "This changes nothing about the financial settlement negotiations." But that night, after Maya left, Eliza found herself returning to the document repeatedly. Daniel Calloway didn't surrender. It wasn't in his nature, wasn't in his training. This wasn't capitulation, it was something else. Her exhibition opened to critical acclaim. Her divorce proceedings advanced steadily toward resolution. Her daughter grew stronger within her each day. By all measures, Eliza was winning the war Daniel had started. Yet a persistent unease followed her, the certainty that the final chapter remained unwritten. In her Chelsea apartment, now transformed with a partially finished nursery, Eliza added the custody withdrawal to her case file. As she closed the folder, her phone chimed with a news alert. Calloway Air enters exclusive rehabilitation facility following DUI arrest. The accompanying photo showed Daniel being escorted into Silver Mist Recovery Center, a discreet facility known for treating wealthy clients with addiction and psychological issues. His expression, haunted, defeated, utterly unlike the calculating man she had married, sent an unexpected chill through her. This wasn't part of the script. This wasn't the Daniel she knew, the man who had plotted her humiliation with cold precision. This was someone broken, someone possibly capable of change. The thought was more disturbing than comforting. Eliza closed the news alert and placed her hands protectively over her belly. "Almost there, Sophia," she whispered. "Almost safe." But even as she spoke the words, a shadow of doubt crossed her mind. In warfare, the most dangerous moment often comes not during active battle, but in the apparent peace that follows, when guards are lowered and vigilance fades. The question that kept her awake that night wasn't whether she had won, but whether victory would bring the security she sought. And beneath that, a more troubling thought. What happens when your enemy becomes someone you no longer recognize, perhaps even someone worthy of redemption? Push, Eliza. One more big push. The delivery room at New York Presbyterian Hospital pulsed with urgent energy as Eliza, face flushed and hair damp with perspiration, summoned her remaining strength. After 16 hours of labor, Sophia Catherine Voss was finally ready to make her entrance into the world. "I see the head," the doctor announced. "You're almost there." Maya gripped Eliza's hand tightly, having stepped into the role of birth partner with the same fierce dedication she brought to legal battles. "You've got this," she whispered. "Almost done." With a final primal effort, Eliza pushed, and the room filled with the indignant cry of new life. Sophia arrived at 3:17 a.m. on a stormy October night, 7 pounds 4 ounces of pink, perfect determination. "She's beautiful," the doctor said, placing the swaddled infant on Eliza's chest. "Congratulations, Mom." Time seemed to suspend as Eliza gazed at her daughter for the first time. Sophia had a shock of dark hair, Daniel's color, but her eyes, when they briefly fluttered open, showed hints of Eliza's green. Her tiny hand escaped the blanket and wrapped instinctively around Eliza's finger with surprising strength. "Hello, little warrior," Eliza whispered. "We made it." In that moment, the months of betrayal, legal battles, and uncertainty crystallized into fierce clarity. This was what mattered. This small, miraculous being who depended entirely on her. Everything else, Daniel's treachery, the divorce proceedings, the social fallout, receded against the primal reality of her daughter's existence. Maya discreetly wiped away tears. "She's going to change everything, isn't she?" "She already has," Eliza replied, not taking her eyes off Sophia. Outside the hospital window, dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the skyline in gentle pinks and golds. A new day, a new life, a new chapter. 3 days later, as Eliza prepared to leave the hospital, a delivery arrived. An extravagant arrangement of white roses, peonies, and orchids, easily worth thousands, with a simple card. "Congratulations on Sophia. She deserves better than both of us. D." Eliza stared at the message, trying to decode its meaning. Not an apology, not quite a threat, but something in between. An acknowledgement, perhaps. "Want me to throw it out?" Maya asked, witnessing her friend's troubled expression. "No," Eliza decided after a moment. "But I want security notified that Daniel Calloway is not permitted to visit, under any circumstances." The nurse helping with discharge paperwork overheard and nodded. "Already noted in your file, Ms. Voss. Mr. Calloway attempted to gain access yesterday while you were resting. Hospital security escorted him out." The revelation sent a chill through Eliza. He had been here trying to see Sophia, trying to insert himself back into their lives despite everything. The flowers weren't a peace offering, they were a declaration. The war wasn't over. "We need to accelerate the settlement," she told Maya, as they left the hospital, Sophia secured in her car seat. "I want this finished before she's a month old." The conference room at Bradley, Chen and Santiago, Maya's law firm, had been the site of 4 previous settlement attempts, each ending in impasse. Today marked the 5th and potentially final negotiation before the case would proceed to court. Daniel sat across the table, flanked by Preston Barrington and 2 additional attorneys. His appearance had improved since the tabloid photos from rehab, the haunted look replaced by something more controlled, more familiar. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, his only concession to informality the absence of a tie. "Let's be clear," Barrington began. "My client is prepared to be generous regarding financial matters, but certain non-negotiable points remain." "We've heard this before," Maya replied coolly. "Your client's definition of generous has consistently fallen short of compensating Ms. Voss for the damage, personal, professional, and financial, that he deliberately caused." "That characterization is disputed," Barrington countered, "but in the interest of resolution, we've prepared a new proposal." The document slid across the table, outlined a settlement that, while substantial, contained a poison pill. A shared publicity agreement that would effectively prevent Eliza from ever discussing the circumstances of their divorce. "This is a non-starter," Maya said after reviewing it. "You're asking Ms. Voss to surrender her right to tell her own story, while your client remains free to shape whatever narrative serves him." "My reputation has suffered enough," Daniel spoke for the first time, his voice calm but tight. "I'm trying to rebuild. I can't do that with this hanging over me indefinitely." "Your reputation suffered because of your actions," Eliza responded directly, meeting his gaze. "Not because of mine. Something flickered in Daniel's eyes. Not quite anger, something more complex. "How is she?" he asked suddenly. The question, so personal amid the legal maneuvering, caught Eliza off guard. "Sophia is not part of these negotiations." "She's my daughter too," Daniel said quietly. "Biologically, yes," Eliza acknowledged. "In every other way that matters. You surrendered that claim when you called her an inconvenient complication and planned to abandon us both." Daniel leaned forward. "People change, Eliza. 3 months of intensive therapy forces certain reckonings." "Convenient timing," she replied unmoved. "But this isn't about your journey to self-awareness. It's about protecting Sophia from someone who demonstrated with meticulous planning that he was willing to humiliate and discard her mother." The negotiations deteriorated from there, ending when Daniel abruptly stood and left the room, his legal team scrambling to follow. Maya's expression was grim as she gathered their materials. "Court," she said simply. "He's not going to settle on reasonable terms." Eliza nodded, gathering her strength for the battle ahead. "Whatever it takes." On a crisp November morning, Marcus Calloway arrived at Eliza's Chelsea apartment with documents requiring her signature. Sophia, now 4 weeks old, slept peacefully in her bassinet nearby. "The trust is established," Marcus explained, spreading papers on the dining table. 20 million initially, with structured additions on her 5th, 18th, 21st and 25th birthdays. Completely independent from family assets, controlled by an independent trustee until she's of age. Eliza reviewed the documents carefully. "Daniel can't touch this ever?" "Not a penny," Marcus confirmed. "Even I can't access it once it's finalized. It's Sophia's alone." The sum was staggering, far beyond anything Eliza had envisioned for her daughter's security. Yet it wasn't the money that moved her, but Marcus's commitment to his granddaughter. Unlike his son, the elder Calloway had proven himself a man of integrity, determined to right the wrongs perpetuated in his family's name. "Have you spoken with him recently?" Eliza asked as she signed the final document. Marcus's weathered face revealed little. "Daniel is struggling. The rehabilitation was beneficial, but reality has been harsh. The company is moving forward without him. Many of his social circles have closed ranks. His attempt to launch an independent venture has met with resistance from potential investors." "And you believe his rehabilitation was genuine?" "I believe he's confronting truths about himself that he's avoided his entire life," Marcus replied carefully. "Whether that constitutes genuine change, time will tell." After Marcus left, Eliza stood over Sophia's bassinet, watching her daughter's peaceful sleep. The trust would ensure her financial security, but money couldn't protect her from emotional harm. Only Eliza could do that, by remaining vigilant, by never allowing Daniel's toxicity to touch their lives. Or so she believed. The courthouse steps became a media gauntlet as the Calloway-Voss divorce proceedings finally moved to trial. Camera flashes exploded like lightning as Eliza emerged from her car, Maya protectively at her side. "Ms. Voss, is it true Daniel is fighting for custody?" "Eliza, did you trap Daniel with your pregnancy? Are the rumors about a secret settlement true?" The questions, increasingly hostile, increasingly slanted toward Daniel's perspective, followed them into the building. Something had shifted in the narrative. Where public sympathy had once aligned firmly with Eliza, recent weeks had seen a subtle repositioning in certain media outlets. Inside, Maya pulled Eliza into a quiet alcove. "Something's happening," she said, concern etching her features. "The press questions, they're echoing talking points we haven't heard before." "Daniel's PR machine at work," Eliza suggested, adjusting her blazer. "Maybe, but it feels coordinated, targeted." Maya checked her phone. "I've asked my team to look into recent media placements about the case. Let's see who's been talking to whom." The courthouse doors opened, and Daniel entered with his legal team. He looked impeccable, still handsome, still commanding, but with a new dimension to his presence. Subtle details, the more conservative suit, the less aggressive posture, the absence of his usual imperious gaze, created an image of a man humbled, perhaps even wronged. The transformation was so effective that several reporters called out sympathetic questions as he passed. "Mr. Calloway, how does it feel to be denied access to your daughter?" "Daniel, any response to rumors that the wedding exposure was staged to protect Ms. Voss from her own indiscretions?" He offered no comment, but his expression, a perfect blend of dignified suffering and restrained emotion, spoke volumes. By the time he reached the courtroom, he had effectively recast himself as a victim rather than perpetrator. "He's been coached," Maya whispered as they took their seats. "Professional crisis management. Expensive. Skylar," Eliza realized suddenly. "This has her fingerprints all over it." The trial's opening day proceeded with technical arguments and procedural motions. It wasn't until Eliza was leaving the courthouse that confirmation of her suspicion arrived. Skylar Morrow waiting by the exit doors in a carefully casual encounter that fooled no one. "Eliza," Skylar greeted her with artificial warmth. "You look well. Motherhood suits you." "What do you want?" Eliza asked directly, Maya tensing beside her. "Just to chat. Woman to woman." Skylar's smile never reached her calculating eyes. "Things have changed since our last encounter." "Nothing has changed," Eliza countered. "You're still the woman who helped plan my public humiliation. Daniel is still the man who wanted to abandon his child. The only difference is now you're both desperate." Skylar's perfect composure cracked slightly. "You don't know what you've done, do you? Destroying a man like Daniel Calloway doesn't end with a scandal and a divorce. There are ripple effects. People get hurt. Is that a threat?" "A reality check." Skylar stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Daniel's changed. I've changed. We're willing to be reasonable about this divorce, to make it painless for everyone, including Sophia. But your scorched earth approach is forcing responses you might regret." Before Eliza could reply, Maya intervened. "Ms. Morrow, any further communication should go through counsel. Now please step aside or I'll have security escort you out." Skylar retreated, but her parting words lingered. "This isn't over, Eliza. Not even close." The first hint of real danger came 3 days later. Eliza was feeding Sophia when her phone alerted with a message from an unknown number. Attached was a photo of her entering her apartment building that morning, taken from across the street, clearly surveillance rather than paparazzi. No message accompanied the image. None was needed. A second alert followed minutes later, this time an email containing financial information about her gallery, including confidential negotiations for an upcoming international exhibition, information that only a handful of people should have known. She called Maya immediately. "Someone's watching me, and they've accessed my private information." Maya arrived within the hour, bringing a security consultant who swept the apartment for surveillance devices and found none. "This is intimidation," the expert concluded. "Letting you know they can reach you, access your information, potentially harm your career." "The timing aligns with Skylar's warning at the courthouse," Maya noted, pacing the living room while Eliza held Sophia protectively. "But this goes beyond normal divorce tactics, even for someone as vindictive as Daniel." "It's not just Daniel," Eliza said, showing Maya a third message that had just arrived, a dossier on Maya herself, including details about a confidential client matter that could potentially create ethical problems if exposed. "This is bigger than him. Someone with resources is helping coordinate this." "We need to go to the police," Maya insisted. "With what? Photos taken in public? Information that could have been leaked by anyone with access to my gallery contracts?" Eliza shook her head. "They've been careful to stay just on the legal side of harassment." A plan formed in Eliza's mind. Dangerous, perhaps, but necessary. "We need to draw them out, force them to show their full hand." "How?" "By giving Daniel what he claims to want." Eliza looked down at Sophia, sleeping peacefully against her shoulder. A chance to meet his daughter. The meeting was arranged at Marcus's Hamptons estate, neutral territory with private security that both sides could trust. Daniel arrived alone, having agreed to the strict conditions Eliza had established through their attorneys. Eliza waited in the sun-filled solarium, Sophia sleeping in a bassinet beside her. When Daniel entered, she noted the familiar, confident stride at odds with the careful humility he projected in public. He stopped several feet away, his eyes fixed on Sophia. For a moment, genuine emotion crossed his face, something raw and unguarded that Eliza had rarely seen. "She has your eyes," he said quietly. "And your hair," Eliza acknowledged. "Among other things, we'll discover as she grows." Daniel took a seat opposite her, maintaining the agreed distance. "Thank you for this. I know it couldn't have been an easy decision." "It wasn't," Eliza confirmed, "but necessary." "Because?" "Because someone is targeting me. Maya, potentially Sophia. Someone with resources beyond what you alone could marshal." She watched him carefully. "I needed to see your face when I told you that." Daniel's expression darkened. "What are you talking about?" "Surveillance, data breaches, threats that remain just vague enough to avoid legal action." Eliza leaned forward. "Sound familiar? Or has Skylar been handling those details for you?" "I haven't spoken to Skylar in weeks," Daniel said, his confusion appearing genuine. "And I would never—" He stopped, composing himself. "I would never threaten Sophia or her safety. Whatever you believe about me, believe that." "Then explain what's happening," Eliza demanded, "because someone is escalating this conflict well beyond divorce proceedings." Daniel was silent for a long moment, his gaze shifting between Eliza and their sleeping daughter. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and tense. "It's not me, but I think I know who it might be." He met her eyes directly. "I've made enemies in business, powerful ones, and my current vulnerability that creates opportunities for them." "Be specific," Eliza insisted. "Victor Casimir," Daniel said after a hesitation. "Russian investor. I blocked his attempt to acquire a Callaway property last year, a building he wanted for money laundering. He doesn't forgive easily, and he'd target me and Sophia as leverage against you." Eliza found it hard to believe. "Why now?" "Because I'm vulnerable now," Daniel repeated. "Isolated from family protection, removed from company resources, the perfect time to strike." He leaned forward. "And because I've been quietly working with federal investigators about his operations as part of my rehabilitation." The revelation hung between them. If true, it changed everything, casting Daniel not as perpetrator, but as another potential target. "Prove it," Eliza said finally. Daniel reached slowly into his jacket, removing a business card. "My FBI contact. Call him. He'll confirm enough to verify I'm telling the truth." Eliza took the card, still suspicious. "And Skylar's warning at the courthouse?" "Skylar has her own agenda," Daniel said grimly. "Always has. If she's involved with Casimir, it wouldn't surprise me. She cultivates powerful men as a survival strategy." Outside, the afternoon light began to fade, casting long shadows across the solarium. Sophia stirred in her bassinet, making small sounds that drew both parents' attention. "May I?" Daniel asked hesitantly, gesturing toward the bassinet. Against her better judgment, Eliza nodded. Daniel approached slowly, kneeling beside his daughter. His hand hovered over her for a moment before gently, tentatively touching her small fist. Sophia's fingers reflexively curled around his index finger, and Daniel's composure broke. A single tear tracked down his cheek as he whispered something too low for Eliza to hear. The moment was shattered by the sound of breaking glass. A window at the far end of the solarium exploded inward, followed by a small object that rolled across the floor. A smoke grenade, already beginning to release thick grey plumes. Daniel reacted instantly, scooping Sophia from her bassinet and pulling Eliza down behind a heavy sofa as more windows shattered. "Security room," he ordered, already moving toward a concealed door in the paneling. "Now!" Eliza followed, heart pounding as smoke filled the room. Through the broken windows, she glimpsed dark figures moving across the lawn, 3, maybe 4 intruders breaching the estate's perimeter. Daniel punched a code into a hidden keypad, revealing a reinforced safe room built into the mansion's original design. As they tumbled inside and the door sealed automatically behind them, alarms began blaring throughout the property. Sophia wailed in protest at the sudden movement and noise. Daniel handed her carefully to Eliza, then moved to a security panel, activating exterior cameras and a direct line to police. "Armed intruders at the Callaway estate," he reported rapidly. "At least 3 individuals, smoke deployed, possible additional weapons." Eliza cradled Sophia, trying to calm her while processing the sudden violence. Through the security monitors, they watched black-clad figures moving methodically toward the house before estate security engaged them, forcing a retreat. "This was coordinated," Daniel said, watching the monitors. "Professional, they knew exactly when we'd be here." "How?" Eliza demanded, protective rage replacing her initial fear. "This meeting was arranged through attorneys with confidentiality agreements." Daniel's expression hardened. "Someone betrayed that confidence, someone close to one of us." As police sirens wailed in the distance and the intruders fled into the surrounding woods, Eliza and Daniel stared at each other across the safe room, former enemies forced into uncertain alliance by a greater threat. "I need you to tell me everything," Eliza said. her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "Everything about Casimir, about your work with the FBI, about who might have known we would be here today." Sophia had quieted, apparently unharmed but clinging to her mother. Daniel looked at them both, his expression resolving into something Eliza hadn't seen before, not calculation or manipulation, but grim determination. "I will," he promised. "But first, we need to move you and Sophia somewhere safer. If they found you here, they can find you anywhere." The implications hung in the air between them. Their private war had drawn in dangerous new combatants. Whatever reckonings remained between them would have to wait. For now, survival took precedence over justice. The FBI safe house in upstate New York existed on no official records. A former executive retreat remodeled for security, it sat on 20 acres of wooded land, with surveillance systems tracking every approach. Inside, Eliza watched snow falling outside the living room window, while Sophia slept in a portable crib nearby. 3 teams confirmed working for Casimir, Special Agent Rhonda Mercer reported, spreading surveillance photos across the dining table. Daniel and Marcus stood on opposite sides, examining the evidence. Former Russian military, all with suspected ties to intelligence operations. "And you're certain they were targeting both Daniel and Eliza?" Marcus asked, his voice heavy with paternal concern. "The surveillance predates their meeting at your Hampton property," Agent Mercer confirmed. "Our assessment is that Casimir's organization has been monitoring both of them for weeks, possibly months." Daniel studied the photos intently. "This goes beyond business revenge. This is personal for him. Because you're cooperating with the investigation into his money laundering," Agent Mercer agreed. "You became a liability. In his world, liabilities are eliminated." Maya, who had been cleared to join them after rigorous security protocols, turned to the agent. "What about Skylar Morrow's involvement?" "Still being determined," Mercer replied carefully. "We have confirmed communications between Ms. Morrow and individuals connected to Casimir's network. Whether she's a willing participant or being manipulated remains unclear." Eliza absorbed this information with growing clarity. The past week had been a blur of emergency relocations, security briefings, and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for Sophia. The divorce battle that had consumed her life now seemed distant and trivial compared to the very real physical threat they faced. "What happens now?" she asked. "We accelerate the case against Casimir," Mercer explained. "Your testimony about the attack gives us grounds for additional warrants. Meanwhile, you remain under protection until we've neutralized the threat." After the briefing, as others dispersed to make calls or review security protocols, Eliza found herself alone with Daniel for the first time since the attack. He looked worn, the confident mask he typically wore now replaced by genuine exhaustion. "I never wanted this for you," he said quietly. "Or for Sophia. What did you expect when you decided to cooperate with a federal investigation into a Russian oligarch?" Eliza asked, not unkindly. "I expected the threat to be directed at me, not my—" He hesitated. "Not at you and Sophia." The unspoken word, family, hung in the air between them. Whatever they were now, they were no longer that. "Why did you do it?" Eliza asked. "Cooperate with the FBI? That's not the Daniel Calloway I knew." He was silent for a long moment, staring out at the falling snow. "After the wedding, after rehab, I had nothing left to lose." A bitter smile crossed his face. "Turns out, that wasn't true. I still had you and Sophia to lose, even if I'd already damaged that relationship beyond repair." Before Eliza could respond, Maya appeared with a laptop. "You need to see this," she said urgently, setting it on the coffee table. The screen showed a breaking news report. "Billionaire heiress Skylar Morrow found dead in Manhattan apartment. Police investigating." The protective custody that had felt stifling before now seemed woefully inadequate. Skylar's death, initially reported as an apparent suicide, but quickly revealed to be a professional hit disguised as self-harm, sent shockwaves through their small group. "She knew too much," Daniel said grimly, after Mercer briefed them on the preliminary findings. "Or became a liability. Either way, Casimir is cleaning house." "She came to warn me," Eliza realized, recalling their courthouse encounter. "In her own way. There are ripple effects. People get hurt." She knew it had escalated beyond a divorce battle. The revelation shifted something in Eliza's understanding. Skylar, manipulative, ambitious, cruel, had still been a woman caught in a dangerous world of powerful men. Her death, violent and premature, felt less like justice and more like tragedy. Daniel seemed similarly affected, retreating into lengthy calls with the FBI and his own security contacts. The man who had once plotted Eliza's public humiliation was now consumed with ensuring her and Sophia's safety, working tirelessly to accelerate the federal case against Casimir. On the third night in the safe house, after everyone else had retired, Eliza found Daniel in the kitchen, staring at a glass of untouched whiskey. "You should sleep," she said, surprising herself with the concern in her voice. "So should you," he replied, pushing the glass away untouched. Eliza made herself tea, the domestic normalcy of the action striking an odd contrast with their circumstances. "I've been thinking about Skylar," she admitted, "about how easily any of us could have ended up like her." "I got her killed," Daniel said flatly. "If I hadn't involved her in my schemes, if I hadn't drawn her into my life at all, we all made choices," Eliza countered. Skylar included, some worse than others. Daniel finally looked at her directly. "I know an apology is meaningless after everything I've done, but I am sorry, Eliza, not just for the danger I've put you in now, but for the pain I caused before, for treating you, treating us, as disposable." The sincerity in his voice was disarming. This wasn't the calculated contrition he had displayed in court or the media. This was raw, stripped of performance. "I believe you," she said finally, "but belief isn't forgiveness." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Daniel said. "Just the chance to keep you and Sophia safe. After that, I'll disappear from your lives if that's what you want." Before Eliza could respond, Agent Mercer burst into the kitchen, expression tense. "We need to move. Now. Casimir's people may have compromised this location." The emergency relocation happened in darkness, a helicopter landing on the property's designated pad, a rushed boarding with minimal belongings, Sophia wrapped protectively against the rotor wash. They lifted off as the first security perimeter alarm sounded, confirming the imminent threat. "How did they find us?" Marcus demanded from his seat across from Agent Mercer. "We believe there's a leak within the support staff," she replied grimly. "We're investigating, but right now distance is our priority." They flew south, eventually landing at a military airfield where a government jet waited. Their destination wasn't revealed until they were airborne, a safe house in rural Virginia, even more isolated than the previous one. As dawn broke, casting golden light through the plane's windows, Eliza watched Daniel speaking intently with Mercer and another agent. His expression was focused, determined, reminiscent of his corporate negotiations, but without the cold calculation that had once defined him. He caught her watching and approached, taking the seat beside her. "They're accelerating the timeline," he explained quietly, mindful of Sophia sleeping against Eliza's chest. "Moving against Casimir's network within 48 hours. Why the rush? The attacks are escalating, not just against us." He hesitated. 3 witnesses in the federal case have been targeted in the past 24 hours. 1 dead, 2 in critical condition. Casimir's burning everything down before he flees the country. The gravity of the situation settled over Eliza. This was no longer about their personal conflict or even their safety alone, but part of a larger, deadlier game with multiple lives at stake. "What do they need from us?" she asked. "From you? Nothing. You and Sophia will remain secured at the Virginia location with maximum protection." Daniel's expression turned resolute. "From me, a more active role." Understanding dawned slowly. "You're going to be bait." Daniel shrugged, attempting nonchalance that didn't reach his eyes. "My testimony is the cornerstone of their case. If Casimir believes he can eliminate me before the indictments come down, it's too dangerous," Eliza found herself saying, surprising them both with her vehemence. "It's necessary," Daniel countered gently, "and it's the least I can do after everything." Looking at him, truly seeing him perhaps for the first time since their relationship imploded, Eliza recognized that whatever his failures as a husband and father, Daniel possessed a core of courage she hadn't acknowledged before. Whether driven by guilt, responsibility, or genuine growth, he was willing to risk his life to protect others. "Sophia deserves to know her father," Eliza said finally. "Not just stories about him. Make sure you come back." Something shifted in Daniel's expression, a spark of hope quickly tempered by reality. "I'll do my best," he promised. The Virginia safe house was a renovated farmhouse surrounded by rolling hills and dense forest. While more rustic than their previous location, its isolation and multiple security features made it ideal for protection. Eliza settled into a routine with Sophia, trying to create normalcy amid armed guards and daily security briefings. Daniel had departed with the FBI tactical team, his role in their operation classified beyond what Eliza was permitted to know. Marcus remained with them, his business empire temporarily managed through secure communications. The forced proximity had created an unexpected bond between Eliza and her almost father-in-law, united by concern for Daniel and protection of Sophia. He was always capable of more than he believed, Marcus reflected one evening, as they sat on the farmhouse porch, Sophia asleep in a bassinet nearby. Catherine, his mother, she saw it in him, the capacity for goodness beneath all that ambition. What happened to him? Eliza asked. How did he become the man who could plan something so cruel? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I taught him the wrong lessons, he admitted finally. After Catherine died, I channeled my grief into making him tough, teaching him that vulnerability was weakness, that people were either assets or obstacles. The old man's voice cracked slightly. I created a version of myself I thought would survive in this world. Instead, I nearly destroyed him. The confession hung in the night air, heavy with regret. Eliza found herself thinking of Sophia, of the responsibility of shaping another human being, of how easy it would be to pass on her own wounds and fears. He's trying to be better, she acknowledged. I don't know if he can undo the damage, but he's trying. That's all any of us can do, Marcus replied softly. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Agent Mercer, her expression grave. We need to talk, she said, gesturing them inside. In the secure communication room, Mercer activated a screen showing surveillance footage. This was taken 12 hours ago at one of Casimir's properties in Manhattan. The grainy video showed Daniel entering a building, accompanied by two individuals Eliza recognized as FBI agents. What happened next unfolded with horrifying speed, an explosion blowing out the ground floor windows, the front of the building collapsing in a cloud of debris. Oh my God, Eliza whispered, her hand covering her mouth. Daniel was inside? Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. He was, Mercer confirmed, along with 4 agents and 2 civilians. Survivors? Marcus pressed. 3 confirmed so far. Rescue operations are ongoing. Mercer's professional demeanor softened slightly. I don't have confirmation on Daniel's status yet, but we're doing everything possible. The hours that followed were an exercise in excruciating patience. Marcus retreated to make calls, leveraging every contact he had for information. Eliza found herself in Sophia's room, watching her daughter sleep peacefully, oblivious to the possibility that her father might already be gone. Near midnight, Mercer appeared in the doorway. We have confirmation. Daniel survived the blast. Relief flooded through Eliza, so intense it was almost physical. However, Mercer continued, her expression tempering Eliza's hope, his injuries are significant. He's in surgery now. How bad? Eliza asked. Critical but stable, Mercer replied carefully. The next 24 hours will be crucial. As dawn approached with no further updates, Eliza made a decision. I need to go to him, she told Mercer during the morning briefing. Whatever security concerns you have, find a way to make it happen. It's not just security, Mercer explained. The operation is still active. Casimir believes the explosion killed everyone inside, including Daniel. That misconception is giving our teams the advantage they need to move against his network. So Daniel becomes a ghost, Eliza realized, until it's over. Exactly. No visitors, no communications that could leak his survival. Mercer's expression softened slightly. I understand your concern, Ms. Voss, but right now the best thing you can do for Daniel is maintain the deception that's keeping him safe. 3 days passed in a haze of limited updates and growing tension. The news reported the Manhattan explosion as a gas leak, with casualties including unnamed federal employees. Casimir had reportedly left the country hours after the blast, destination unknown. On the 4th morning, Mercer arrived with the first genuine smile Eliza had seen from her. It's done, she announced to the assembled group. Casimir was apprehended attempting to enter Montenegro. His entire U.S. network is in custody or cooperating. The threat has been neutralized. The relief in the room was palpable, but Eliza had only one question. Daniel, out of intensive care, Mercer reported. His cover is maintained for now, but we can arrange transport for you to see him. Hours later, Eliza entered a private room at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, Sophia in her arms. Daniel lay propped against pillows, his body visibly damaged by the explosion. One arm in a cast, bandages covering burns on his neck and face, monitors tracking his vital signs. His eyes, however, were alert and brightened immediately at the sight of them. "You came," he said, his voice raspy from smoke inhalation. "We came," Eliza corrected gently, approaching the bed. She carefully positioned Sophia where Daniel could see her. Someone's been missing her father. Tears welled in Daniel's eyes as he reached his uninjured hand to touch Sophia's small fist. "I didn't think I'd see either of you again," he admitted. "You almost didn't," Eliza acknowledged. "The doctors said it was close." "Worth it, though," Daniel said, his gaze moving between Sophia and Eliza. "Casimir's operation is dismantled. You're both safe now. Really safe." As they talked, Eliza gradually learned the full story. The explosion had been planned, not by Casimir, but by the FBI, creating a controlled blast that appeared devastating while actually being carefully managed to minimize injuries. Daniel had known the risk, volunteering to be the visible target that would convince Casimir his threat had been eliminated. What neither Daniel nor the FBI had anticipated was a secondary device planted by Casimir's people, which had detonated unexpectedly after the controlled explosion. That blast had caused the real damage, killing one agent and severely injuring Daniel and others. "You could have died," Eliza said quietly, after Sophia had fallen asleep in a bassinet brought by a nurse. "I deserve to," Daniel replied simply. "After what I did to you, to us." "No one deserves that," Eliza countered. "Not even you at your worst." A silence fell between them, not uncomfortable but heavy with all that remained unresolved. Finally, Daniel spoke again. "The divorce papers came through yesterday. My lawyer brought them." He gestured weakly toward a folder on the bedside table. "Everything you asked for. No contests, no delays, no hidden clauses." Eliza picked up the folder, verifying its contents. The settlement was indeed everything Maya had argued for. Generous financial terms, full custody to Eliza, visitation rights for Daniel contingent on continued therapy and sobriety. "Why now?" she asked, "after fighting every point for months?" Daniel's gaze was direct, stripped of the manipulation that had once characterized his interactions. "Because you deserve peace. Because Sophia deserves parents who aren't at war. And because I need to start making amends that actually matter, not just gestures that make me feel better." The answer resonated with an authenticity Eliza hadn't expected. The man before her wasn't the Daniel who had plotted her humiliation, or even the Daniel who had first entered rehabilitation. This was someone new, or perhaps someone who had been buried beneath layers of ambition and emotional armor all along. "What will you do now?" she asked. "After you recover." "Start over," he said simply. "My father's offered a position with the family foundation, nothing with decision-making power, just a chance to do some good with the Callaway resources. I'll take it at least, until I figure out what I actually want to be, not what I was programmed to be." He hesitated, then continued, "And I want to be part of Sophia's life, however you'll allow me to be. Not because of rights or legalities, but because she deserves to know she was always loved, even when I was too broken to show it properly." Eliza studied him, searching for the manipulation or calculation that had once been his default mode. Finding none, she made a decision that surprised even her. "We'll try," she said finally. "Supervised visits at first, building slowly, but we'll try." The relief in Daniel's expression was profound. "That's more than I deserve," he acknowledged. "Thank you." 6 months later, spring had transformed New York City into a canvas of renewal. In Central Park, Eliza pushed Sophia's stroller along a sun-dappled path, the 10-month-old babbling happily at passing dogs and colorful flowers. Daniel waited on a bench near the Bethesda fountain, rising when he saw them approach. His physical recovery had been remarkable. Only a slight limp and barely visible scars on his neck remained visible from the explosion. The psychological changes were more significant, a gentleness in his demeanor, an authenticity in his interactions that had once been absent. "There's my girl," he said, kneeling to greet Sophia, who recognized him immediately and reached out with excited squeals. Their twice-weekly visits had established a rhythm, a cautious rebuilding of what could have been lost entirely. As Daniel entertained Sophia with her favorite stuffed elephant, Eliza observed the interaction with complex emotions. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, their marriage officially lasting less than a year. Yet here they were, crafting something that wasn't quite friendship, wasn't quite family, but held elements of both. "I signed the papers this morning," Daniel said as they walked toward the playground. "The Foundation for Arts Education in Underserved Communities is officially established. The board would like your input on the grant distribution criteria, if you're willing." The foundation had been Daniel's idea, using a significant portion of his personal fortune to support arts programs in schools throughout New York City. It was both atonement and purpose, a way to honor Eliza's passion while creating something genuinely beneficial. "I'll look at the proposal," Eliza agreed. Myers reviewed the legal structure. "Extensively," Daniel confirmed with a small smile. "She still doesn't trust me, which is exactly why I wanted her involved." They reached the playground, where Daniel carefully placed Sophia in a baby swing, pushing gently while she laughed with delight. The simple joy of the moment contrasted sharply with the darkness that had brought them here. Betrayal, violence, near death, all transforming into this peaceful afternoon. As they prepared to leave, Daniel hesitated before asking the question Eliza had been expecting. "Have you decided about the London opportunity?" The prestigious international curator position had been offered 2 weeks earlier, a career-defining opportunity that would mean relocating to England for at least 2 years. "I'm leaning toward accepting," she admitted. "The program is extraordinary, and Sophia's still young enough that the move wouldn't be disruptive for her." Daniel nodded, absorbing this with visible effort. "You deserve it," he said finally. "You've earned every opportunity that comes your way." The unspoken question hung between them. What would this mean for his relationship with Sophia, for the fragile peace they had established? "I've been thinking," Eliza said carefully, "about visitation arrangements. If I accept the position, I understand if it needs to change," Daniel said quickly. "We can arrange visits when you're back in New York, or I could travel to London occasionally." "Or," Eliza interrupted gently, "you could consider establishing a European base for the foundation. London has no shortage of underserved communities that could benefit from arts programs." Daniel stared at her, comprehension dawning slowly. "You'd be open to that? To me being nearby?" "For Sophia's sake," Eliza clarified, "and because I believe people can change. I've seen it happen." They walked in silence for a while, the implication of her words settling between them. Not forgiveness exactly, but something adjacent to it, acknowledgement that the man who had once sought to destroy her was not the same man walking beside her now. "Thank you," Daniel said finally, "for seeing possibility instead of just the past." As they reached the park exit, their paths would diverge, Eliza to her Chelsea apartment, Daniel to his more modest Upper West Side residence. Before they parted, Daniel passed Sophia back to her mother's arms. "Whatever you decide about London," he said, "know that I'll support it, not because I'm trying to prove something or earn points, but because your success matters. It always should have." Eliza nodded, recognizing the truth in his words. "I'll let you know my decision next week." Walking home with Sophia babbling happily against her shoulder, Eliza reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The revenge she had once sought, the public humiliation of Daniel Calloway, had been achieved, but had transformed into something more complex than simple retribution. What remained wasn't victory or defeat, but evolution, the painful, necessary growth that comes from surviving betrayal and violence. Daniel had been broken and reformed by consequences. She had been strengthened and redefined by adversity. And Sophia, innocent and untouched by the darkness that had preceded her birth, represented the possibility that some good could emerge from even the most devastating circumstances. That evening, as Eliza reviewed the London offer letter one final time, her decision crystallized. The path forward wasn't about punishing Daniel or protecting herself from him any longer. It was about creating a future where Sophia could know both her parents at their best, not their worst. She signed the acceptance letter, then sent a simple text to Daniel. "London, September 1st, foundation opportunity worth exploring." His reply came moments later. "I'll be there, for both of you, however you need me to be." Outside her window, Manhattan glittered with its countless lights, each representing lives intersecting, separating, transforming. Somewhere in that constellation was the penthouse where she had once discovered betrayal, the hotel where Daniel had plotted with Skylar, the rainbow room where everything had shattered publicly. But here, in her quiet apartment with Sophia sleeping peacefully, Eliza found herself looking forward rather than back, toward London's foggy streets, toward new professional challenges, toward a future that bore little resemblance to the one she had once envisioned but held its own kind of promise. Not happily ever after, but something more honest, the hard-won peace that comes from surviving the worst and rebuilding with clearer vision and stronger foundations. Glass mansions, after all, were beautiful but fragile. What emerged from their shattering could be something far more enduring. 5 years later, London's autumn painted Hyde Park in brilliant hues of amber and crimson as Sophia Voss-Callaway raced ahead on the path, her dark curls bouncing with each energetic step. At 5.5, she was all motion and curiosity, pausing occasionally to examine a particularly interesting leaf or to watch the swans gliding across the Serpentine. "Not too far," Eliza called, smiling as her daughter turned and waved before continuing her exploration. "She has your fearlessness," Daniel observed, walking beside Eliza at a measured pace, "and your eye for beauty. But your strategic mind," Eliza countered. "Did you see her chess game yesterday? 5 years old and already thinking 3 moves ahead." They shared a knowing smile. These observations of inherited traits had become a comfortable ritual over the years, a way of acknowledging their shared creation, without revisiting the painful circumstances of her beginning. London had transformed them all. For Eliza, the curator position at the Royal Academy had evolved into directorship of its contemporary collections, her vision earning international recognition. For Daniel, the European branch of the Callaway Arts Foundation had become his true legacy, far outshining his previous corporate achievements. And for Sophia, London was simply home, the city where she was growing up with 2 parents who, while not together, had forged something unexpected from the ashes of betrayal, a genuine partnership in raising their daughter. They reached the park bench that had become their regular Sunday meeting spot, neutral territory in a foreign city that had allowed them to redefine themselves away from New York's memories. "Maya called yesterday," Eliza said as they sat watching Sophia feed the ducks. "The Manhattan Gallery expansion is ahead of schedule. She thinks we should consider a simultaneous opening with the London space in the spring." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Makes sense from a publicity standpoint. 2 continents, 1 vision." The gallery project represented their first true professional collaboration, a network of exhibition spaces dedicated to emerging artists from underrepresented backgrounds. What had begun as Daniel's atonement had evolved into a shared passion, combining his business acumen with Eliza's artistic vision. "Dad's planning to visit next month," Daniel mentioned. "He's finally stepping back from daily operations at Callaway Enterprises." "Good," Eliza said warmly. "Sophia's been asking when Grandpa Marcus is coming back." The relationship between Eliza and Marcus had deepened over the years, transcending the initial bond formed during crisis. The elder Callaway had become a stable presence in Sophia's life, flying to London quarterly and maintaining regular video calls in between. "He's bringing the papers for the trust fund adjustment," Daniel added. "The one we discussed, transferring partial control to Sophia at 21 instead of 25. "She'll be ready," Eliza agreed. "If she's anything like either of us, she'll be impatient to make her mark by then." Their conversation turned to practical matters, Sophia's upcoming school projects, the foundation's next funding cycle, holiday planning. The easy rhythm of co-parenting had become second nature, their interactions free of the tension that had once defined them. As Sophia returned with a handful of colorful leaves she'd collected, Daniel checked his watch. "I should get going. Board call with New York in an hour." "Daddy, you promised to show me the new gallery space today," Sophia reminded him, her expression so like her mother's when negotiating that Daniel couldn't help but smile. "That was tomorrow, sweetheart," he corrected gently. "No, you said Sunday," Sophia insisted with the conviction of a young child certain of her facts. "Mom, didn't he say Sunday?" Eliza shrugged diplomatically. "I believe there was mention of the weekend." Daniel knelt to Sophia's level, a gesture that had become instinctive in their relationship. "Tell you what, if your mom agrees, we can all go now for a quick look, and then tomorrow I'll show you all the details as planned." Sophia's face lit up. Victory achieved. She turned to Eliza with hopeful eyes. "All right," Eliza agreed, "but just a brief visit. You have reading to finish for school tomorrow." As they made their way toward the black cab stand, Daniel received a text from his assistant. He frowned slightly at the message. "Everything okay?" Eliza asked, noticing his expression. "Yes, just—" He hesitated. "Skylar's book is being released next week. Apparently, we merit a chapter." Eliza absorbed this information calmly. "We knew it was coming eventually. Skylar Morrow hadn't died that night 5 years ago. The body found in her apartment had been her assistant, killed to send a message. Skylar herself had fled to Switzerland, eventually securing immunity by testifying against Casimir's remaining network. Her tell-all memoir, Glass Ceilings, Glass Houses, had been generating pre-publication buzz for months. "Myers reviewed the legal implications," Eliza continued. "There's nothing actionable, just Skylar's version of events, which will be recognized as self-serving." Daniel nodded, impressed as always by Eliza's composure. Still, the timing with the gallery launch might actually help, Eliza pointed out pragmatically. "Free publicity for the foundation. People love a redemption story, especially when it's verified by actions rather than just words." The cab delivered them to an elegant building in Mayfair, where construction crews were completing the transformation of a former banking hall into the Callaway Voss Gallery's flagship London location. As they entered through the temporary doors, Sophia ran ahead, already familiar with the space from previous visits. "It's really coming together," Eliza observed, admiring the soaring ceilings and the quality of light filtering through the newly installed skylights. "Thanks to your design vision," Daniel acknowledged. "I would have preserved too much of the original stuffy atmosphere." They walked through the main exhibition area, discussing final details and installation timelines. Working together had revealed complementary strengths neither had fully recognized during their brief marriage. Eliza's intuitive understanding of how spaces affected viewers' perception of art, Daniel's gift for creating sustainable business models that supported artistic integrity. "Daddy, come see," Sophia called from a side room. "They installed my special window." Daniel and Eliza followed their daughter's voice to a small education space designated for children's art programs. There, as promised, the contractors had installed a stained glass window designed by Sophia herself, a colorful interpretation of a family that included Mommy, Daddy, Grandpa, and various beloved teachers and friends. "It's perfect," Daniel said, genuinely moved by the sight. "My whole family," Sophia explained proudly, "for the kids who come to make art here." Eliza knelt beside her daughter, arm around her small shoulders. "It's beautiful, Sophia. The most important piece in the entire gallery." Later, after Daniel had departed for his video conference and Sophia was absorbed in her reading, Eliza found herself drawn to the locked drawer of her desk, where she kept certain mementos from the past. Among them was the file her private investigator had assembled 5 years ago, documenting Daniel's betrayal in meticulous detail. She hadn't opened it in years, but Skylar's impending book had stirred memories. The papers inside told a story that now seemed to have happened to different people: a calculating, cruel Daniel, a naive, trusting Eliza, a manipulative, ambitious Skylar. Characters from another life. Mixed with these documents was something else, a USB drive containing the full video that had played at their wedding reception, publicly exposing Daniel's planned betrayal. Eliza inserted it into her computer, watching as the younger version of herself orchestrated the most perfect revenge imaginable. What struck her now wasn't the satisfaction of that moment, but how differently she would handle the same situation today. The revelation felt important somehow, not a rejection of her past actions which had been justified, but recognition of how thoroughly those events had transformed her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Advance copy of SM book obtained. Nothing we didn't expect. Call me tomorrow to discuss strategy." Followed shortly by another. "Also, you might want to see this." Attached was a news article announcing Casimir's release from federal prison on a technicality, with authorities suspecting he had already left the country for Russia. Eliza felt a momentary chill, remembering the terror of those days 5 years ago. But it passed quickly. Casimir had bigger concerns than old vendettas, and the protective measures they had maintained out of habit were more than adequate. She closed the file, returned the USB to its drawer, and went to check on Sophia, finding her daughter half asleep over her book. As she gently guided the child to bed, Eliza reflected on the long, improbable journey that had led to this peaceful London evening. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to Eliza's office at the Royal Academy, Marcus Calloway, arriving a month earlier than planned. "I hope you don't mind the surprise," he said, embracing her warmly. "Some matters are better discussed in person." They settled in the small sitting area overlooking the Academy's courtyard, where Marcus produced a formal envelope. "What's this?" Eliza asked, accepting it curiously. "The final piece of unfinished business," Marcus explained. "When I established Sophia's trust fund 5 years ago, I included a sealed letter to be given to you on her 5th birthday. With everything happening with the gallery opening, I forgot until now." Eliza opened the envelope, finding a handwritten letter dated just days after their confrontation at Marcus's Hampton estate, 5 years earlier. "Eliza, if you're reading this, it means several things have come to pass. My granddaughter has reached her 5th birthday, the trust fund remains intact, and most importantly, you have allowed me to remain in your lives despite the pain my son caused you. What you don't know, what neither you nor Daniel know, is that I was aware of his plan to humiliate you at your wedding long before it happened. My private security team intercepted communications between Daniel and Skylar 2 months before the ceremony. I did nothing to stop it, not out of cruelty or indifference, but because I recognized something in you that my son had failed to see, a strength and dignity that would not allow such betrayal to destroy you, but would instead forge you into something even more formidable. I gambled with your happiness, with your heart, believing that the inevitable confrontation would either break Daniel free from the person I had wrongly shaped him to be, or prove him irredeemable. The choice to let events unfold was mine alone. The trust fund for Sophia is not merely provision for her future, but acknowledgement of my complicity in the pain that surrounded her beginning. Whether you choose to share this truth with Daniel is entirely your decision. I will accept whatever consequences come from this revelation. With deep respect and gratitude for the grace you have shown our family, Marcus Eliza read the letter twice, her hands trembling slightly as the implications sank in. Marcus had known, had allowed Daniel's betrayal to proceed as a test of Daniel, of her, of what might emerge from the collision. "You knew," she said finally, looking up at the man who had become family to her. "All along." Marcus nodded, his expression solemn. "The hardest decision I've ever made. Watching my son become someone I no longer recognized, seeing the damage my own parenting had caused, I had to know if he could be saved. And you were the catalyst that could force that reckoning. You used me," Eliza said, the words not accusatory but contemplative. "Used us both." "Yes," Marcus acknowledged without defense. "And I've lived with that knowledge every day since." Eliza fell silent, processing this revelation that reframed the entire narrative of the past 5 years, the revenge she had executed so perfectly, the subsequent danger and redemption, the careful rebuilding of relationships, all stemming from Marcus's calculated inaction. "Does Daniel know?" she asked finally. "No," Marcus replied. "That truth is yours to reveal or keep." Eliza folded the letter carefully, returning it to its envelope. "I need time to think about this." "Of course," Marcus agreed, rising to leave. "I'll be at the hotel if you want to talk further." After he departed, Eliza remained motionless, staring out at the autumn day, her mind replaying countless moments with new understanding, the trust Marcus had shown in her strength, the faith he'd held that from destruction might come renewal. That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Eliza made her way to Daniel's Notting Hill home, the letter secure in her handbag. He welcomed her with surprise, ushering her into the comfortable living room where they had spent many family evenings. "Everything okay?" he asked, concerned by her unexpected visit. "I'm not sure," she answered honestly, handing him the letter. "Your father gave me this today." Daniel read in silence, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to a complex emotion Eliza couldn't quite name. When he finished, he set the letter down carefully. "He let it happen," Daniel said, voice unsteady. "He knew what I was planning and let it happen." "As a test," Eliza added quietly, "for both of us." Daniel rose and moved to the window, staring out at the London night. "And we passed, apparently, broken and rebuilt into something better." "Did we?" Eliza asked, the question genuine. "Are we better?" Daniel turned back to her, studying her face with the depth of understanding that only shared history could create. "You are," he said with certainty. Stronger, clearer, more defined by your own vision rather than others' expectations. And you? He considered the question seriously. Less hollow, he said finally. More human. Someone Sophia can be proud to call father, I hope. Eliza nodded, recognizing the truth in his assessment. Whatever they had become, co-parents, business partners, something adjacent to friends, was indeed better than what they had been. What do we do with this knowledge? Daniel asked, gesturing to the letter. Nothing, Eliza decided after a moment. The past is written. Marcus made his choice, as did we all. What matters is what we build from here. As she prepared to leave, Daniel walked her to the door. For what it's worth, he said, I've never regretted the consequences, only the actions that made them necessary. If my father's manipulation was what it took to become someone worthy of being in your and Sophia's lives, then perhaps some good came from his calculation after all. Eliza paused in the doorway, struck by a sudden clarity. You know what's strange? In trying to orchestrate the perfect revenge against you, I ended up freeing us both. Daniel nodded slowly. From who we were pretending to be. From who we thought we needed to be. Exactly, Eliza said softly. Good night, Daniel. Walking through the quiet London streets toward home, Eliza felt a sense of completion that had eluded her for years. The final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, not resolving the past, but reframing it entirely. The betrayal that had once defined her story was merely the beginning, the catalyst for a transformation more profound than revenge could ever accomplish. From the shattered glass of false promises had emerged something authentic, a mother, a professional at the height of her powers, a woman who had reclaimed her narrative. And somewhere in that journey, Daniel too had found redemption, not through grand gestures, but through the patient work of becoming trustworthy again one day at a time. As she reached her building, Eliza glanced up at the stars visible despite London's lights, constant and unchanging above the human dramas playing out below. 5 years ago, revenge had seemed like the end of her story. Now she recognized it had merely been the turning of a page. Whatever chapters remained to be written, for her, for Daniel, for Sophia, would not be determined by the wounds of the past, but by the choices of the present, made with clear eyes and open hearts. And in that recognition was a freedom more complete than vengeance could ever provide. If this story touched your heart, and you want to keep following inspiring and moving stories, be sure to check out our upcoming videos. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us and keep exploring stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will touch you as well, so click on it now and we'll see you there.